On today's episode of Locked On Lightning, Corey Perry, 400 career goals. We talk about the crazy, insane milestone that he hit at this point in his career. We talk about the big win, not just by a margin, but the big win on primetime, probably the best game of the NHL season, Lightning Oilers. We talk all about that and the outdoor game and more. But first, let's play that music.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. What's up, everybody? If you're watching us on YouTube, thank you for watching the show. We are putting out more episodes on YouTube, and we hope you give us a thumbs up. If you are listening to us on Spotify or a podcast streaming service, we thank you for making us your first listen of the day or the night, as it is a Friday night episode. We're dropping this right now. So let's just jump right into it. So the Tampa Bay Lightning had a fantastic win the other night, 5-3 over the Edmonton Oilers. And I have to say, just my initial thoughts before we get into the nitty-gritty of the game, I really think that other than the excitement, other than the star power that was involved in this game, that we'll get all into that, my initial thoughts is that performance-wise, this is one of the best games they've played all year. I know it kind of fell off a little bit towards the end, as it seemed as almost as if the Lightning took their foot off the pedal too soon. But all around, just a fantastic game. And I think that when we look back at the regular season, whether it's when this regular season ends and we have that kind of that layoff period between the last game of the season and then game one of the opening round of the playoffs, or afterwards, I think that we will look at this game and just probably look at it as probably just the best, most exciting game the Lightning have played all season long. And a lot of it has to do with the fact of just this being a good measuring stick. Early on in the season now, if you listen or watch actually on YouTube to the Locked On NHL ranking show, you would know that I am the co-host of that with Locked On Avalanche host Chris Masilli. And we have been talking all season long about just how much of a huge disappointment the Edmonton Oilers have been. And the fact that they have chosen, really not obviously other than the fact of them changing head coaches. And really oftentimes we see that kind of be the defining factor. We've seen it most recently also with Montreal. We saw it with Vancouver. But the Edmonton Oilers came into this game, playing very, very good hockey. And I spoke about it in the preview episode that we posted, that the Oilers, they're still not at where we think that they should be. Given the talent that this team has, them having two of probably the top 5 best players in the world, we're still not seeing them, I think, at their full potential. And a lot of that had to do, and I kind of alluded to it in the preview episode as well, is that a lot of what went on in this game, McDavid, 2 goals, Draisaitl, 3 assists. Really what it came down to was not the scoring, because we know both teams coming into this game were going to put up the goals. They were going to go shot for shot. What it really came down to was which goaltender was going to blink first. And I have been the biggest critic, I think, other than outside of those who cover the Edmonton Oilers. I think I've been one of the biggest critics of this team, as well as the goalie situation of the Oilers, just because they came into this season, and say what you want about Mike Smith, and no disrespect to him. I saw him all the way back from when he started, when he was with the Lightning. And then he made his way to Arizona, where he really kind of started to blossom into what he is now. And what it really comes down to is, I don't think that Mike Smith is, I'm sure he's a fabulous teammate, but, not to sound harsh, but he's not the answer. Simple, plain and simple right there. Mike Smith might be a good goaltender for maybe a mediocre situation like we saw with him in Arizona. Guy who's going to be able to have a lot of chances to save a lot of shots because your defensive core is just plain flat out not good. So maybe his numbers, if you look at what he did with the Coyotes, are a little bit inflated, and maybe that's why, to a certain degree, that the Edmonton Oilers felt coming into this season that was their guy. But in a game such as this against the Lightning, who we all know by now what they are, we know that they have a very good chance of three-peating. They have a very good chance in the upcoming weeks to possibly not only overtake the Panthers, but somewhat run with the division. And that's a conversation to be had for later on. But what it comes down to is that this Edmonton team, as heavy hitting as they are, still not on the same weight class as your Tampa Bay Lightning. So my initial thoughts from this game going forward, just, everything surrounding, is that the Lightning rose to the occasion. And I was very, very nervous, especially with the track record that the Lightning have over the last couple of years, is that they are a team that feeds off of momentum. So when they have a couple of days off to play with, and we're talking about 3, but in this situation, they had almost 10 days off. They had 8. What it comes down to is that you have to be somewhat nervous where they go into this game. Yes, I'm sure they're practicing. I'm sure John Cooper, being the great coach that he is, still, in my opinion, one of the most underrated coaches in the National Hockey League. But if you look at what this team has done, and any team, this is not just the Lightning have fallen victim to it. Any hockey team, and a majority of hockey teams in the NHL have issues of being able to carry over that momentum. After winning a very tough game against the New Jersey Devils, heading into a game like this, where this could have been a situation where if the Lightning don't come out swinging right away, we could have seen the results easily changed around, or even worse, a blowout. And Lightning did very well. They came out. They didn't allow the Edmonton Oilers to get comfortable. There were certain moments where I really thought early on that the Oilers were going to start to set the pace. And in a game like this, especially with a player like Connor McDavid, who just thrives off the track meet, I thought the Lightning did a good job of slowing things down when they really needed to, even if that's not something that they want to do at that point in time. And I thought that the defensive core as a whole, from the first to the third pairing, did a very good job. Anytime that McDavid was on the ice, guys were very much aware. And even, I'll take a 2-goal night from McDavid and take the W. That's fine. You definitely don't want to have a situation, what we saw a couple of months ago, where the Oilers played the New York Rangers up in Edmonton, in which McDavid they just let him run wild, and he pretty much took over. And he's that talented. We don't see a lot of players in the NHL, or just in the game of hockey in general, where they have that talent to just completely put a team on their back. And yes, it's exciting to see, but I mean, that's one of the criticisms of this Oilers team, is that the fact that they try to do that more times than not, and that's just not something that's sustainable, even for a guy such as Connor McDavid. But going back to the Lightning before we head into the first break, I just want to say, Pat Maroon has just awoken upon in him this year. 9 goals. He's not doing anything flashy. He's just doing his job. He's just cleaning up in front. And the same goes to Corey Perry, which resulted in not only his 14th goal of the season, but also his 400th career goal and the 103rd player in NHL history to do so. And we still have time. I'm not saying that he's going to go on a scoring tear, but if you do remember, if you've been a listener of this show since the beginning of the season, I did say that I would not be the least surprised if he finished the season with 30 goals, which a little bit of a stretch at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of starts to pick it up. I mean, the chances are there. We've seen it throughout the entire season. But Perry does go through these stints where he maybe does not notch a goal for a more than a handful of games. So that might be something that he might work against him in his favor. But overall, what a great win. against one of the better teams in the NHL, regardless of what you think of them. They're looking like they're starting to make a push towards that last wild card spot in the West. But top to bottom, you saw contributions from everybody. Steven Stamkos with another goal, 24 on the season. You saw Braden Point, 19 on the season, and then Kucherov at the end. Just, once again, just top to bottom, everybody contributing. And it's usually on any given night in which you see goals from Point, Kucherov, and Stamkos, the chances of you winning are, I would probably have to say, above 95%. So we're going to continue more about this. We're going to talk about just what does this mean for Corey Perry, his legacy. Obviously, we know he's a Hall of Famer, but where does he rank in NHL history? We talk about that. We talk about the outdoor game on tomorrow night in Nashville. Cautiously optimistic about that one. I'll elaborate on that and more. But first, I want to talk about one of today's sponsors, and that is Built Bar. Now, we're heading into the late stages of February, early March, and I think it's safe to say that, at least for me, that my New Year's resolution, I've just pretty much given up. Working out, it's not working out. But at least, there's still time for me to eat healthy, and I like to have my snacks in between meals. So I want to pick a very healthy snack, and Built Bar is my go-to. It almost feels like it's not really a resolution of eating healthy when I'm eating those. That's how good they are. They are covered in 100% chocolate, real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars, please, people. These things, you won't regret it. They are better than your regular candy bar. A typical candy bar could be anywhere from 200 to 300 calories. Go to built.com and scroll down to the macros chart. You'll be blown away. High protein, low calorie, high fiber, low carb. Most of these Built Bars have only 130 calories. And the best part is that there's tons of flavors to choose from, whether you're a mint brownie person, coconut almond. And this month they got the white chocolate cookies and cream. So don't miss out on that. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. So those of us that are listening, or actually, listening on the podcast platforms, you are joining us back from the break. If you're watching us on YouTube, or as my Locked On NHL co-host Chris Masilli likes to call it, the YouTube, where you're sticking with us here on YouTube, and we're just going to keep it rolling. So talking about Corey Perry, and before I talk about Corey Perry, the hockey player, I just want to take a moment to, obviously I don't know him as well as, Pat Maroon, who played with him in Anaheim, some of these other players that have played with him on the national team in Canada, or played junior with him back in the day, or whatever the case may be. But I just want to take a moment to talk about Corey Perry, the person. If you're new to the show, please go ahead and like and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching us. I had the chance of interviewing Corey in the offseason when he first got signed by the Lightning. And I just have to say, the conversation I had with him before we pressed the record button, just a regular guy. One of the coolest people in hockey that I've had the luxury of just conversing with, and even, just a down-to-earth person, just, joking here and there about stuff like that, and just really picking his brain about a lot of stuff that, we ended up talking about later on in the interview as well. So go ahead and check that out if you want to get your Corey Perry fixed. Just an absolutely fantastic. It's also pinned to the top of our Twitter account on Twitter at LO_Lightning. If you want to follow us on Instagram, go ahead, LockedOn_Lightning as well. Fantastic interview. We also have an interview with Dave Randorf, Lightning play-by-play announcer, as well as Ross Colton. We had him on as well. He was talking about his trip with the Stanley Cup in the offseason and all that stuff. And just, once again, going back to the Corey Perry thing, just fantastic guy. And you could see why Pat Maroon and Steven Stamkos were trying so hard to get him in Tampa. And hopefully, he finishes his career here. But yeah, Corey Perry, the person, the athlete, the hockey player, 400 career goals. And you just show just how great of a player he is, longevity. He's been in the league almost 2 decades, and no signs of slowing down. He's not that torrid scorer that we saw him when he won the Rocket Richard back in Anaheim, but just a smart player, just the kind of guy that any team who is either trying to repeat or trying to win a championship would be lucky to get. And the Lightning were lucky enough to get him. And there is a reason why Corey Perry has played on the last two teams to have lost to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the Stanley Cup final, in case you didn't know. Dallas and Montreal. He was a part of both those teams and a huge part of the success of those teams getting to the Stanley Cup final. And you could see with his presence on the ice this year, this team, there was a little bit hesitancy, I guess, for me at least, and I'm sure for some other people that follow this team very closely, to chalk up, an automatic three-peat. Obviously, with the departure of Coleman, Goodrow, and Gord, because of cap constrictions and the expansion draft, losing those three guys have just been. It was tough for the team, as just in terms of morale, and just tough in terms of how do you replace that level of talent that you have altogether. And really, Corey Perry coming in alongside Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, who was another signing in the offseason. Obviously that line with Maroon is fantastic. You have, like I said, with Maroon and Perry playing with each other back in the day in Anaheim, you have that chemistry. But just you could see when that line is on the ice, Perry's the captain. He's the guy running the show, and it's his, even when he's not on the line with those guys, if he's matched up with other players on this team, you could just see he has a presence about him on the ice. And sometimes, even if a guy's having an off night, their presence is really all it takes to turn things around, to shift the tide of the game, as some people in the hockey world would say, tip the ice in your favor. But just a fantastic player. I think one of the most underrated signings still this offseason. The Lightning, and you got to chalk that up to the Lightning front office. Just they don't miss. Anything they touch turns to gold. And we've seen it over the last 2 years. Every move they make ends up panning out. And I can't wait to see. It's stuff like this that really gets you excited for the upcoming trade deadline that we will talk about on a later episode, where it's going to be interesting to see where the Lightning go, if they stay pat, if they try to foster, if they try to pad up their bottom lines and see if they could add another stick, guy who could possibly score here and there if they need to. It's going to be interesting because even if you make that move, where you're going to put these people. So yeah, Corey Perry, congratulations to on 400 goals if you're listening to this, Worm. So, but as going back to the Oilers game, yeah, like I stated earlier on the show, really the clash of the two Titans, if you really think about it, of the NHL. This is still, regardless of how you feel about the Edmonton Oilers, I still think that they are a class team. I still think that they have a chance to get into the playoffs. As for getting to the Stanley Cup final, that's a whole nother story. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and comment on their chances. I could only focus about the Lightning, but that would be a fantastic. Imagine these two teams playing each other in a best of 7. I don't know how. I think that would be the most stressful finals yet out of the 3 that they could potentially play. Just because, I mean, I don't think the Lightning over the last 2 years, they've gotten lucky, and that's part of winning championships. Sometimes you have to have a little luck, and the Lightning have had their fair share of luck. And really what it comes down to is that the Lightning have never, in the last 2 years at least, probably, I mean, the only team, I think best team that they faced out of their 3 Stanley Cups, their 4 Stanley Cups appearance, I would probably have to say, that Blackhawks team in 2015, they were pretty good. That was a dynasty of Kane, Taves, and that cast of other characters on that team. But I really think that in terms of scoring, and this might be a controversial opinion, is that Calgary team back in 2004. But yeah, imagine a Stanley Cup matchup between these two teams. It would be wild. I think the Lightning would win, just unless the Oilers made a drastic move at the trade deadline, and bolster up their goaltending. Because, like I said before, I don't think that Mike Smith's the answer. But in this game, going back to this game, and we could talk all we want about the possibility of these two teams facing each other. Which, like I said, if the Oilers get in, anything could happen because we know what the Lightning are going to do. They're just focused on getting in and getting to work. But this game, I from top to bottom, I thought the Lightning played a fairly good game. If you look at the stats, the Oilers actually outshot the Lightning, and I think a lot of that had to do with the later on stages. And really, it comes down to the only issue I had with this game was the Lightning. It seemed like late in the second period took their foot off the pedal. After Corey Perry scored that power play goal to get his 400th career goal, it kind of looked like, and you saw it on the Hyman goal. It looked like kind of like they took a step back, but they weren't worried. They were playing with confidence, which you always love to see. But against a team like the Oilers, you can't do that. You can't do that. And people, I at least started to sweat once McDavid scored his second of the game to make it 4-3. That's when I started to sweat. I mean, there wasn't that much time left in the game where I thought that, the Oilers were going to muster up another goal to tie it up to send it to OT. But that's something that you can't happen. And I'm sure Coach Cooper would have addressed it today. And afterwards, he probably addressed it after the game as well to the team. But other than that, I don't have a problem with it. I think with the way the Lightning played, I think the way they controlled the puck, I think they did a very good job early on, even though Edmonton was trying to get things moving fast. I thought that Tampa Bay did a very good job of puck control, being able to slow things down and dictate the flow of the game. And I think that was ultimately what really put swung things for them. Obviously, other than the goaltending situation, Vasilevsky played a fantastic game once again. And really what it comes down to is that the Lightning just had more firepower. They had a better goaltender in net, and they didn't disappoint. And I think everybody around the league was watching this game. Obviously, it was on TNT, so a lot of people in the hockey world were watching this game. This is, I think, in my opinion, the biggest talked about game the entire NHL season. And I still think at the end of the year, unless we see some crazy epic battle between them and Florida from now until season's end, I think this is going to go down as probably the biggest game in terms of just hype that the Lightning have played all season long. So we're going to see Edmonton again in a couple of weeks on that 6-game road trip as the Lightning start in Chicago and they make their way into the Pacific Northwest. So it's going to be interesting to see how part 2 of this matchup goes. I think that both teams are going to be ready to gear up, and I think we're going to see it kicked up another notch. So we'll talk about the rest of the Lightning season as well as that outdoor game in just a little bit. But first, I want to talk about our last sponsor of the day. Now, football might be over this season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college sports. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance, props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is your number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds right to the Olympic coverage that just ended. So hopefully you're placing down those bets for Team USA to win some gold medals here and there. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So like I said before, if you're on YouTube following along, we're just rolling through. If you're following us on the platform, Spotify, Google, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. Once again, if you're listening to this, please make sure to like and subscribe to the pod. So we appreciate all the enthusiasm everybody's been bringing all season long, and we want to continue that and even amp it up as the Lightning roll into the playoffs. So let's talk about this outdoor game. And I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm looking directly into the camera, so you know that I mean business. And I'm being 100% serious. I'm not excited for this game. I'm really not. I feel, and I'm going to say why. And if you guys want to go at me on Twitter, go ahead, DNKY. D8NK. Tweet at me. Tell me, excuse me, that I'm wrong. That I'm ridiculous for not being excited about this game. The Lightning playing their first outdoor game ever in Nashville. Now, I like the spirit of it. You have two Southern teams playing against each other outdoors. But this is the kind of situation, and it's been it's been documented all week long about the conditions where, as of right now, and I'm looking at the weather report, it's going to be in the high 40s, possibly even low 50s and raining. And I tweeted it out today that we might see a situation what we saw with the Lake Tahoe game with the Avalanche and the Golden Knights, where I believe the game was pretty much, it was delayed 7 hours because of the conditions with the sun and all that. Now, obviously, different conditions here, but still, and the Lightning, I don't think are going to have a problem in this game. I think because there's already so much made with, I guess, visiting players, that the ice in Amalie isn't as good as maybe what you would see somewhere in some other parts of the country, which understandable because of the humidity and the heat. But I mean, it is what it is, which is going to be expected in a game like this. Having said that, I think the situation is a little bit different, because not only am I afraid that the conditions are going to be bad, it's going to be a sloppy game. What it's going to come down to is not talent, because these are obviously two very good teams. Nashville's playing pretty well this year. It's going to just come down to, I think, to a lucky bounce. And I just hate games like that, because I think this is going to be such a low calorie hockey game. There's not going to be a lot that fans are going to be able to eat up. And I think that in a situation like this, I think that the NHL should maybe, if they're willing, if they want to start putting games in the South more often, maybe schedule them a little earlier, not February where it's starting to get a little warmer out, but maybe, I don't know, December, middle of January, like a New Year's Eve game. I think that would have been better. But we'll see. Hopefully, don't make any mistake. I'm not rooting for this game to be a dud. I hope it's exciting and it's everything that the NHL wants it to be. I think that these, pairing up two teams like this is fantastic. I think it's a great thing for the league. I think it's a great thing for people in the South who maybe are not really interested in hockey, but want to get into it and don't really have teams. And I mean, what better teams in the South to get involved in an outdoor game than Nashville and in Tampa? Now, maybe Carolina Hurricane fans might say differently, but I think these two teams are the marquee teams in the South in terms of hockey. And I could already hear Jared from Locked On Hurricanes just screaming at the top of his lungs of that content if he hears this. Sorry, not sorry, Jared. So I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think this is going to just come down to a lucky bounce, one of those ridiculous things that we see at the end of a game where the opposing team is just not going to be able to recover from it, because it's just no team's going to be able to get to any flow in this game. Or I could be completely wrong. Hopefully the conditions hold up. Hopefully the temperature dips a little bit lower, so it's favorable to the ice conditions. But yeah, I expect this to be at least like a 2-1 game either way. I think the Lightning might have an edge in this because they are an experienced group. They have a ton of veterans, obviously, and they're going to be able to kind of rally themselves up and keep their cool and not try to do too much if the situation calls for scoring. So we'll keep an eye on that game tomorrow. Obviously, I'll try and drop a highlight after the game, Locked On Now, which for those of you who don't know, Locked On Now is just like an up-to-date up-to-date highlight video, basically of me just quickly summarizing what happened and all that and more. So in the meantime, that's been it for today's episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Denker. I'll talk to you in the next one.